I complied and cost my boss his bonus, and his job, by user nefarious alo. I'm a corporate professional in middle management. My boss is a senior manager, and he's horrible at his job. Peter principle totally applies. He got his annual goals sent down from the corporate ether, and naturally, he added these things to my list of responsibilities. He would receive a hefty bonus for completing them. I would receive none. He would take all the credit, and tell me I was lucky to have him as a mentor. He had this big shot personality. He was a smooth talker that acted like a celebrity, and he was just too important to be bothered by the people lower on the totem pole. He only wanted to interact with people he could brag about, and beyond puckering to kiss their behinds, he spent most of his time at work perusing dating apps. We were a very in-demand group within the company, and we had a revolving door of people coming to our area daily to get help from us. Non-management employees weren't allowed to have cell phones and didn't have access to email, so stopping in was their only option. My boss got furious if I wasn't in my office to catch all the traffic. Completing his goals for him required me to be out of my office. He demanded that I stay in my office for my full shift every single day and accused me of leaving the property and stealing company time, because if I wasn't in my office, how would he know I was working? So I complied. I stayed in my office. When his annual review came up, he lost his bonus. Because he didn't meet a single goal for the entire year, he fell under intense scrutiny. It was found that he was using company funds and resources to take these dating app encounters to expensive places, and was expensing it as work-related. He also used company funds that were meant for a building upgrade to build a new patio at his house. He asked the contractor, a friend of his, to just do the work and find a way to add the money into the company bill. He was promptly fired. We have to use weed killer on our lawn? Fine, by user word wizards. We've lived in this neighborhood for 15 years now, and the HOA board, like many, is mostly made up of the grouchy old people who have too much time on their hands. Sometimes it's fine for a while and then someone new takes over and has some vendetta to pursue. I guess we were due for the pendulum to swing. Our front yard has a few big trees and is thus entirely in the shade. We've tried to plant grass seed a few times, but there's just not enough sun for grass to thrive, so it's mostly low ground cover, no idea what kind, but it's green and we keep it mowed. For 13 years this was fine. Then last year, we got a nasty gram from the HOA, we had weeds. According to the bylaws, we needed to prove we were using chemical lawn treatments to kill anything that's not grass. Crucially, the rules don't require us to hire a weed control company, although that's what they expected. We just had to provide proof in the form of a receipt for money spent. My lovely, petty spouse went on Amazon and ordered a $6 spray bottle of the most woo-woo new age homeopathic weed killer she could find. I think the main ingredient was lavender oil. We dutifully spritzed the yard a few times, sent an action shot and a copy of the digital receipt, and thanked them for their concern. The lavender oil, shockingly, did nothing. We didn't actually have to kill the weeds, though, just try. We've heard nothing from the HOA since, and the front yard still has almost no grass. Customer does not want to approve expense report for going less than 1% over when taking a client to dinner. Okay then, by user weird_stories_ here. Apologies for not being very succinct. Not great in this part, but TLDR at the end if you want. So I was on an off-site short-term, not really short, project. Coming from one of the cheapest to live countries in Europe and staying for months in Singapore, project location, I had found some places that I could be eating for pretty cheap and the food was good and within my taste palette. We were getting, let's say a random number, $60 per day for food expenses, but I was spending somewhere around $25–30 on average, with the highest ever getting to just under $50. Short project going long, drawn over 10 months by the point of the story, and our customer's client is raising a ton of issues, 70% of them not really an issue. Discussed this a few times with some guys in my company and a manager told me to take the client out for a dinner and some drinks. He would confirm the extra expense, just be careful to not go too much overboard on the expense. Specifically asked what that means and he told me try to not go over $200–$250. We go out and neither me nor the client really drink much, so we end up having some food and a drink each. The guys at the restaurant know me well by that point and almost always do some rounding on the bill or bring something extra to the table on the house, and with them bringing plenty finger food I end up with a bill of $60.68, number adjusted to the random number above. But yes, about 70 cents above the daily limit. Way below the 200 plus allowance for that. End of month I send the report in and put a special note for that day/night. Expense report goes through my company with no problems, but the customer, our company's customer, flags that receipt up as not acceptable and not to be covered. They put me in direct communication with customer and IOTA explain. Nope. Not accepted, not covered. Talk again with my company and tell them the situation and that manager X advised me to do so as well as mentioned he would confirm, but unfortunately the guy is out sick, COVID and flu, and not to return for at least 2 weeks. The customer must have this settled by the 15th of the month and he wants to hear specifically from the manager that I was advised to act in such a way and approved by that manager for him to cover it. This is getting crazy and out of hand, so my boss, owner of our company, just covers it from his side. The full $60.68, not just the 68 cents. Customer says no receipt that goes over the $60 limit will be approved. Unfortunately for me the customer is local to Singapore and he randomly drops in at the job site. And I get to see him the day after the resolution above and all comments were written, in emails. Face to face I tell him, you do realize that I spent on average less than $27/day from the allowed $60/day. This was laughable to be denied. He probably was offended and he yells at me again that no receipts over $60 will be covered. Well QMC, at all 3 places that I eat every day for the past 10 months, they agree to print $60 receipts every time I eat at their place. They even agree to split in half the remaining value between me and a tip to the server. I had requested for the entire amounts to go to the servers as tips as I just cared for the petty revenge, but apparently all of them felt a 100% tip every day is uncomfortable for them. Next month expense report is sent out and the customer calls me directly seething and asks why every single daily receipt is at $60 from a specific date onwards. I just reply with no receipts over $60 will be covered, so I have to fit my meals within the allowance. He called to complain to my company, but the relevant person told him that they didn't understand and to please explain what agreement was broken. He never came back as far as I know. I continued charging the max for the remaining 2 months, they're netting me a cool $700 and even better service, food and chef experiments that were otherwise only internal to the staffs of the restaurants. TBH I had to pay in having to deal with the idiot customer even more after that, but he was a handful before it as well. I can say that that project took at least a year off of my life with all the stress and nerves. TLDR, the usual story of expense report not getting approved for a ridiculous small amount over the limit and MC with charging the max onwards. Edit, slight clarifications. Customer and client are 2 different entities in this story. Client, A, decides to get a product from customer, B. B, hires my company, C, to engineeringly manage the project that is performed by a different company, D. D doesn't not play a role so it is omitted from story, they are the entity being so late. Manager that instructed me to take the client out was sick and out of reach. The customer wanted to only hear from the manager and nobody else, maybe wanted to yell at him, idk. Charging dinning other people, very rarely, expenses to customer, B, is how the company, C, has been operating with this specific customer, B, for many years, way before I started there. Example, when a government inspector has to be brought in at end of project, they are always dined on the expense of customer. Expense report was submitted to company, C, and approved to be sent to customer. Lastly, I just offered full money to the waiters for everything over meal cost. They accepted it first night, but from next day they said split 50 to 50 the tip because it was too much. Second restaurant said 50 to 50 directly. I ate there because that's what my stomach could handle for everyday meals while not being accustomed to local cuisine. Sometimes I used other places with more local food, but couldn't handle it daily. Complained to me pretending to be a patient's father? Well, let's involve her parents then, by user Leals87. I used to work at a very nice private hospital where the place looked like a hotel, the food was great and the service unrivaled. We were voted best private hospital in the country quite a few times and all around, people were happy and the care was great. The nurses were mostly old school, stern but very passionate about patient care, with no time for anything that stops them from doing their job. My job was to focus on marketing and complaints, and TBH, I didn't have a lot of work on the complaints side, but every now and again something would come up. If there was an incident, the RNS would usually come and warn me to expect something, and give their side of the story. One morning, as I got to work, a RN was waiting at my door to update me on an incident the previous night. There was a 18-YO patient who had a small OP, but was prone to dizziness and fainting. Now, slip and falls are a big thing in hospitals and these incidents get monitored very closely. Since she was a slip and fall risk, they moved her to a private room right in front of the nurse's station so that she can be monitored throughout the day and night. One night, the tattoo-clad, older nurse's description, 20-something boyfriend comes to visit, and forgets that this is in fact a hospital and not a hotel. Old school, stern nurse realized something is amiss when the room's doors were closed and, after she pushed the door open, the curtains around the bed was drawn too. Seeing the privacy takes second priority to a patient's healing and safety in a hospital, old school nurse wasn't having any of this. She pulls the curtains open, pulls the boyfriend out of the hospital bed and gave them both a talking to. Tattoo boyfriend left soon afterwards, apparently furious that his evening was ruined. Sure enough, 2 hours after the nurse visited my office, I get a mail from patient's father, detailing how his daughter's privacy was invaded the previous night, how she had a private conversation with her boyfriend, and how they were unfairly treated by a nurse. I was surprised that an older gentleman would write an email to a hospital with so many spelling errors and complete lack of punctuation, but the email address, something like tattooguy@gmail, was a total giveaway as to who the real author was. Now, technically, I was just able to reply on the email, detailing our experience and side of the story. However, sharing private patient information on an email to an unconfirmed email address is bound to get me in serious trouble. So, I did what any sane, and perhaps, slightly malicious, person would do. I called document control and asked them to pull the email address on file for me. This happened to belong to her mom. I forwarded the email to her, mentioning that I received the following email from her daughter's father, but since she is the contact person on file and we need to stick with the people that we have permission to contact, may she be as kind as to share our response with him? I then detailed what the nurse told me. About the patient being a slip and fall risk that requires constant monitoring, about the boyfriend visiting, about the door and curtain being closed, and the nurse catching them in the hospital bed together. I apologized on behalf of the nurse for invading their privacy, but explained that open doors are protocol to ensure a patient's safety, and our main priority is getting a patient safe, healthy, and back at home as soon as possible. I ended the mail with my contact details and invited her to contact me if she has any further questions. Well, if the parents didn't know about the incident, they knew now. I am told the daughter was well behaved for the remainder of the time, and the boyfriend didn't stop by once during the rest of the patient's stay. So, lessons learned: don't include your parents' details on your hospital file as your main contact details if you don't want them contacted. Don't try and catfish a hospital employee and respect a hospital for what it is, a place of healing and not a hotel. TLDR, 18-year-old and boyfriend were caught going at it in her hospital bed. Then boyfriend emails hospital to complain about incident, telling us he is the patient's father. We respond to his claims via the email address on file, which happened to belong to patient's mother. Whoops. Don't overcommit. Got it, new friend, thanks for the tip, by user KillTeturtle. Worked at Big CO for a few years as a project manager and had some good strings of project delivery. My mangler arrives, kilted, bad news, unknown PM got fired, you are taking over that HR delivery team. Crap. Being a BPMFH, I'd heard rumors about issues with some HR projects, but Big CO never fires PMs, so really didn't dig into my network to see what the deal was. Some poking, paying for rounds at happy hours, got the info that unknown PM had failed to deliver some functions that HR wanted. Okay, got it. HR director knows I'm coming, sets up a meeting with their next level minions managers. Smiles, team talk, greater good ideas, etc. At the end, as I get ready to meet the development team, a vicious minion says, "Welcome Kilted, let me give you some free advice. Unknown got fired for overcommitting on what would be delivered. Thanks for the guidance." And confirmed what beer money had told me. New project starts, we do requirements gathering. Each requirement gets assigned hours: design, development, testing, unit, system, user, and some for implementation. Hours get turned to dollars and then the business people, HR, need to assign a value to this requirement, building a business case, costs X to do, Y value, X, Y, then we do it. So we wade through HR functions and a few of the solve world hunger type requirements. World hunger doesn't make the business case cut and we get the list of requirements. Requirement doc goes out for final review. But, since this isn't my first rodeo, but it is a new corral, I create a document with everything that got cut. It also goes out for final review. I'm also clear that development will stop until both documents are signed off. People involved sign off both docs. Officious Minion, OM, comments this is a great idea, all projects should have this. Old hands here can see where this is going, but for the new 10,000 I'll carry on, https://xkcd.com/1053/. We are in the last week of user acceptance testing. Minor stuff, team fixes and we flow them in. I get a call from the lead developer, hey Kilted, OM has filed a critical issue that we missed a function. Fine, what is it, and is it in the functional spec? We trade details, but the key one is it's not in the signed functional spec. I dig, yep it's not in the function spec, but it is in the functions that were cut document. Contact OM and go, hey the functions you want got cut in the requirements phase, we can schedule them for a future release, but we will need a business case. No, it must be in this release, I'm going to withhold approval until I get it, make your team do it. Team meeting, is this possible? Murmurs of here we go again, 8 weeks, why does this always happen? Dig around and find that OM pulled this the last 3 projects, they tried, failed and unknown PM got fired. Got it. So we are all agreed that we can't do this and not jeopardize the release. Silence, WTF. Okay, so we have a choice. We either all agree we are not doing this, it's a really bad idea, or you decide you can do this and you spend the next 8 days working around the clock. I'll back you up, and if you say no, it's no. I need a bio break, you all decide and in 5 minutes tell me what you want to do. Kill video, mute and listen. You think he can tell them no? Don't know, he's old and has been here for a while, old? WTF. We can't keep doing this, yeah my family is unhappy already with the hours. More chat back and forth. I come back in. Do we have a decision? Yes, we can do it in 6 weeks, that's not going to fly, so we agree, next release. Yes. I set up a meeting with HR director and their team, along with the stakeholders for the project. I explain current status, the new requirement and that we can do it, but it will be at least a 10-week delay. OM goes, this is missing functionality that wasn't implemented, needs to be in this release. Actually it's in the cut functions list that you all agreed to and signed off on as I pass out the page with the requirement highlighted, and each person gets a copy of their email where they go I agree. OM frowns and goes well this is an error, I would never agree to this. Sorry, you did, as did all the people in the room. And you'll note that while we estimated the cost, there was no estimate of the business value. Well the business value should have been followed up on I did, and here is the email chain between you and I and your team about the status of this. Slide more papers around the room. Papers shuffle as they read. I continue so no business value, nobody opposed tabling it. And if you remember the first time we met you said do not overcommit. And according to these emails, push shove Russell, you and your team have tried to jam last moment features into the last 3 projects and caused all of them to be either late or have systems issues. Silence as people read. Director goes Kilted, with the agreed to functions, where are we? I need user sign off and we are good to go. Fine, all of you get your sign off to Kilted by the end of the day, OM please come to my office so we can chat about this. We all nod and leave. Release goes live on schedule. OM gets moved to special projects which consists of reading the want ads until they are departing the company on new adventures. And Sanjay, the lead developer for this project and the prior 3, gets a surprise bonus for keeping an awesome email trail.